Well, first of all, obviously, Florida, high scoring team, lot of size, a lot of things that they bring to the table. So what do you think what's the biggest issues or problems they pose?
I told our guys they're 1, 2, 3, or 4 in every statistical category on both sides of the ball that impact winning in the SEC or nationally. Anything that you could Google, if you look it up, they would be 1, 2, 3, or 4 in the SEC, 1, 2, 3, or 4 nationally. They're good enough to beat anybody in the country. They do play really fast, as you said. They shoot a lot of threes, make a lot of threes, and their inside presence is tremendous, which is why they are so highly ranked in what they do from a rebounding perspective and the points that they score in the paint. They're tremendous.
Well, as you mentioned the other day about playing to your ceiling, is there any in this slump? Is there any one thing you can point to and say, okay, this would be our top priority of getting back? What we got to do it.
Yeah, I think our guys have been tremendous in diagnosing the things that are tangible, the things that are intangible. Sometimes there's numbers that you can see that you can use as evidence to teach from. Sometimes you have to watch it, and sometimes you have to listen to them. And over the last 10 days, we haven't been good in all of those things in regards to hitting our ceiling. And over the next 10 days, we have to be better. And to their credit and to the staff's credit, since the last time I've seen you, I think we have accomplished a lot. Not to speak to the result of tomorrow's game, but our improvement and taking advantage of the lessons from the poor results. I anticipate those things will be better.
Maybe something along those lines with intangibles. You've talked a lot about EQ and emotion. I'm just curious how you feel like you guys have been in that aspect of things over the last 2 weeks particularly, and if that has been a topic of discussion of improving.
Yeah, I think, like you guys have heard me say before, when you win, I don't think it's one player or one thing. And when you lose, I don't think it's one player or one thing. And I think our organization is built such that it's never going to be one decision or one person. That's not necessarily the case in other sports or other teams. It's just kind of how our roster and our staff is composed. I actually think this team has the highest EQ I've ever seen. And I also think that that's why when things are good, they receive it with humility. And when things are bad, they receive it appropriately to improve. That guy that you heard what he said, and I'm never in here and I never tell him what to say. He has remarkable EQ. And so I think the collective group and how we think and how we approach our work has been tremendous. And I have great admiration for that. And that doesn't mean that we're going to win tomorrow. And we hate that we didn't win the last 3 games. But we also were diagnosing those things when we won 5 in a row, too. And so I think it's the willingness to learn good and bad requires you to have a high EQ.
Is there some level of excitement with the players or anything that's boosting for the program to be featured on game day before a game?
Yeah, I didn't know that until just a little bit ago. I had people texting me 2 weeks ago when we were playing Tennessee while college game day wasn't here. And then on my calendar, I know I've never explained my calendar to you guys, but I have a lot of historical things relative to games on my calendar. And the only thing I had on my calendar specific to the game, there are 3 in the AP, there are 4 in Ken Palm. I think when I wrote it on my calendar, they were 4 in the net. And the game's 8:30 East Coast time, and it's at SEC Network. And I actually texted him this morning. I didn't know College Game Day was there, and the reason I text him is a lot of the people associated with College Game Day were texting me. And I was like, what? I didn't know. But I didn't know you could be on College Game Day and play on the SEC network. Like, I thought if you were on College Game Day, that meant you were on ESPN. Maybe that's only football.
Yeah,
Do you know?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Florida's for real good enough to have College Game Day, and that we get to play them. That's a great opportunity for us.
I know you talked about the maturity of this team, but do you feel like there's any more sense of urgency, or is it kind of they've kind of had the same mindset throughout this season?
Well, I think from a contextual standpoint, when you think about, in essence, we practice for 4 weeks prior to the season starting, and then non-conference is 9 weeks, and now we're closing down our 9th week in SEC play. I think with each passing week, regardless of who we played or where we've played, I think we've had growth. And I think, as I've said before, particularly in November and December, you have no choice but to grow up relative to the schedule that we've played. I think we've played 22 quad 1 or quad 2 games thus far. 12 of those games have been 1 or 2 possessions. And so in those scenarios over and over, there's a lot of information to learn from. So have we been perfect? No. Have the results been good enough at times? No. But in regards to their mindset, I don't think that has been a problem at all.
I know in years past you've talked about how you've kind of broken up the season into segments for your team. You're in the middle of a 4-game stretch that's really tough. Is this a segment? How have you kind of talked about this segment, or is that something that you've done with these guys this year?
Yeah, we're doing it a little different. Obviously, Henry's year 4, H is year 5, Mo is year 4, 4 is year 4, Andy's 3, Solo's 3. So we've kind of changed a little bit of the vibe and of the flow, and we started that in non-conference just because of how the schedule laid out. 4 games before we go to Vegas, and then a week in Vegas, and then ACC Challenge, and then a week off before we play in Fort Worth, and then another week off before we play in Indianapolis, and then in essence a week off following Christmas. So we've kind of changed it. I really like some of the things that we're doing in conference play, but as you know, which is why you're asking the question, we haven't split it up. We still count the same. You're supposed to win at home. That's a 0. If you lose at home, it's a -1. You're supposed to lose on the road. It's a 0. If you win on the road, it's a +1. They're aware of their history relative to their home record, road record. But we've kind of went about it differently. I don't think it's probably right for me to share right now because it's been something that was created internally, but we're playing the whole 10-week season out, specific to your question. But it's been good.
Well, with Pharrell and what he showed last game, how much was that the matchup, and how much is that something you guys could build off going into this game?
Yeah, I think he's shown glimpses of stardom. And similar to our team, we need the consistency from all of them on both ends of the floor. We need the best version of Gochi, but we need the best version of each of them. And I think if we can continue to try to get the best version of each of them, then collectively the consistency would be better. I thought he was tremendous. It changes the dynamics of our team when we have a presence at the rim, offensively and defensively. And it potentially makes it easier on some of the other guys that are on the floor. And so we need him to be like that, even for longer periods of time. I thought what he did in, 21-ish minutes, really good. And I even think that Andy, over the last 3 games, has begun to be more aggressive for Texas A&M, and it ends up being that it's more aggressive for himself, but it helps Texas A&M. And how we utilize Solo, we need Solo to get back to being Solo. So I could run through all of our guys, but we need all of them as we're entering March. Let's all start trending to be our best.
And with you guys are still projected a 3 seed after.
Is that right?
Yeah, at least by a few notable people. And curious if that's. I know you don't want to talk about it, you don't want to think about it too much, but after a 3-game losing streak, if that's kind of a motivator to say like, hey, it really hasn't been that crucial to the seed line.
Yeah, I think it was the day that we played somebody, and Travis asked me after the game what I thought about the top 16 reveal or whatever that is. And I've told you guys this before. I actually think the best thing that I can do for our organization is just be present and be an example of that in the words that I say and in my actions. And I'm not perfect at it, but I am more unaware of what's happening outside of our group. I haven't been as good a dad and husband as I should be because I've just tried to emotionally and mentally stay completely where my feet are. Physically, I'm trying to do better and make sure my habits are right, but I'm asking everyone in the organization to do that because I think if you are motivated by something way down the line and then in the present day you don't handle your business, well, then that's going to change what the tweet said or what the prognosticator or whatever that word would be. Like, yeah, we just gotta, we need to get a little better. And can we be consumed in that? And I know how difficult that is for me, but I also think it's very difficult for our guys. And so however many days from now, when it is Selection Sunday, then we'll know. But what transpires between now and then that we can control, we need to live in that moment and be the best we can be. And I was on that point, you guys know that my wife was a really good player and she's an incredible mother. But she is also probably, like, I didn't know it at the time, but she's probably the best head coach's wife you could possibly have just because, like, she was recruited. She knows what's going on. She knows coaches. She knows. And you remember, like, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, you'd watch games, and you may be too young. You may not have been watching 10 years ago, but you would watch games, and if you were cheering for a team, you go, now, do we want them to win or lose? And my kids grew up in that sort of genre of conversation. So baby's the youngest, and you know the youngest child attributes. So there's a game on Wednesday. And she says, Dad, do we want so-and-so or such and such to lose? And I go, sweetie, that doesn't really matter, like how you think. And she goes, what do you mean? I go, well, everything's changed. That's not what it is. And she goes, yeah, it's the net now, right? And I go, yeah, they say that that's a part, but the net is really not about us. The net is who do they beat that you've played. That's what influences your number. And so then I began to show her, like, you see how it's like a stock and it goes up and down, and we didn't play because it's based on who we've played and how did they do. It's really not based on us. And so I'm not being condescending. If you're telling me we're still a 3 seed, yeah, because it speaks to the last 18 weeks of work and what they're doing when we haven't played them. And so play number 2, play number 3, play number 1. Well, mathematically, that's good because that's 2 more quad 1A games. But in yesteryear, that math doesn't apply anymore. And I think that's why based on what I read, I think that's why the college football playoff and all of the things that have transpired in college football over the last 10 years, that's why after 1 year, they're like, we got to change it again. Because it's the math. And I understand there's a lot of influences with the math, but that we're thankful, but that's a part of the process, but not motivation.